A ghostly image stares back from a simple piece of linen. This is the Shroud of Turin, a relic that has ignited a centuries-long battle between faith and science. By the end of this investigation, you will understand the shocking scientific evidence that both confirms and contradicts its ancient origins. We will uncover why a medieval carbon dating result is fiercely disputed and explore the inexplicable process that created a perfect three-dimensional portrait. What does this mysterious cloth truly reveal about the boundaries of our knowledge? The year was 1357. In the quiet French town of Liège, a local knight publicly displayed a piece of linen that would ignite a firestorm of controversy lasting for centuries. For the first time in the historical record, a cloth bearing the faint, haunting image of a crucified man was presented to the public. It immediately drew crowds of faithful pilgrims, their hearts full of devotion, alongside wary skeptics who questioned its origins. This was the moment the Shroud of Turin stepped out of the shadows and into the light of history. Yet, its journey before that day in Liège is a profound mystery. Where had it been for the previous 1300 years? Some theories suggest it traveled secretly from Jerusalem, perhaps protected by the Knights Templar or hidden within ancient churches, moving through countless hands across Europe. Its documented path, however, begins in Liège. From there, the cloth passed into the possession of the powerful House of Savoy, a royal dynasty that safeguarded it for generations. In 1578, the shroud was moved to its current home in Turin, Italy, where it has been housed in the royal chapel of the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist. Its survival there is a story in itself. The cloth endured a devastating fire in 1997 when flames threatened to consume the chapel. A brave firefighter, risking his life, used a sledgehammer to shatter the bulletproof glass case and rescue the relic from certain destruction. This narrow escape only added to its legendary status. But these documented events are punctuated by long, silent gaps. The centuries between the crucifixion and its first appearance in France are a complete blank slate. This void in its timeline is the very space where speculation flourishes, forcing us to ask a critical question. Is this the actual burial cloth of a first-century man from Judea, or a masterful creation from a 14th-century artisan's workshop? To understand the intense scientific scrutiny that was to come, we must first appreciate this fractured historical journey, a path filled with as much mystery as the image on the cloth itself. The quiet mystery of the shroud was shattered forever in 1898. An Italian lawyer and amateur photographer named Secondo Pia was granted a rare permission to photograph the relic. Working in the dim light of the Turin Cathedral, he exposed his glass plate negative, expecting to capture the faint, ghostly imprint he saw with his own eyes. But when he developed the plate in his darkroom, he was met with an image so startling he nearly dropped the glass. The negative he held in his hands was not a shadowy reverse of the cloth. Instead, it showed a clear, positive portrait of a man with hauntingly precise features. In that moment, Pia realized a profound truth. The Shroud of Turin itself is a perfect photographic negative. The faint, yellowish markings on the linen, so difficult to decipher with the naked eye, contain hidden within them a perfectly detailed image, one that only reveals its full clarity when its tones are inverted. This was a technology that did not exist in the 14th century, or indeed at any point before the modern era. How could a medieval forger have created an image that only makes sense as a picture when viewed through a process invented centuries later? This accidental discovery forced a fundamental question. Was the image formed by some form of energy, a burst of light or radiation that acted like a primitive camera, projecting a likeness onto the cloth. The implications were staggering. Following this revelation, scientific interest in the shroud intensified. Early 20th century researchers turned their attention to the dark, reddish-brown stains on the cloth, believed to be blood. They noted with growing fascination the anatomical precision of the figure. The wounds on the wrists and feet aligned perfectly with known Roman crucifixion practices, which targeted specific nerve clusters to maximize agony. The scourge marks across the back and legs showed a distinct pattern, consistent with the Roman flagrum, a whip with small metal weights designed to tear the flesh. There was a large wound in the side, precisely where a Roman lance would have struck to confirm death. Every physical detail seemed to correspond with historical accounts of a crucifixion, rendered with a level of accuracy that no medieval artist was known to possess. These initial investigations transformed the shroud from a question of faith into a genuine scientific puzzle, setting the stage for a much deeper and more controversial exploration to come. The puzzle only deepened with the arrival of a dedicated team of investigators. In 1978, a group of over 30 American scientists, calling themselves the Shroud of Turin Research Project, or STURP, descended upon the Turin Cathedral. They were granted an extraordinary 5 days of continuous 24-hour access to the relic. Their mission was to treat the shroud not as an object of veneration, but as a physical artifact, applying the full force of modern forensic science to its mysteries. They brought with them a mobile laboratory filled with equipment never before used on such a precious and controversial object. For over 120 hours, they worked in shifts, their instruments humming in the quiet chapel. They bombarded the linen with ultraviolet light to study its fluorescence. They used infrared spectroscopy to analyze its chemical makeup at a molecular level. They took thousands of high-resolution photographs, capturing every minute detail in staggering clarity. They were searching for a single, simple answer, a clear explanation for how the image was created. What they found, however, was anything but simple. After months of painstaking analysis back in their laboratories, the STURP team reached a startling conclusion. They could find no evidence of paint, dye, or any other pigment on the cloth. There were no brushstrokes, no outlines, no traces of an artist's medium. The image, they determined, was not a painting at all. It was something far more strange. The coloration resided only on the very topmost microfibers of the linen threads, a superficial degradation of the cellulose itself, as if the threads had been very lightly scorched. It was a perfect photo-negative image formed by a process that left no physical substance behind. In their official report, the scientists made a now famous statement. They could not explain how this precise, three-dimensional information was encoded onto the cloth. The image, they wrote, remains a mystery. Their exhaustive investigation had successfully ruled out forgery by known medieval methods, but it had failed to provide a definitive natural explanation. This left a scientific vacuum, an unanswered question that would soon draw an even more contentious form of inquiry, one that promised a final, objective verdict. The promise of a definitive answer arrived in 1988. After years of negotiation, the Vatican approved a radical procedure, cutting small samples from a corner of the shroud and sending them to 3 of the world's most prestigious laboratories in Oxford, Zurich, and Tucson. Their tool was radiocarbon dating, a method that measures the steady decay of carbon-14 in organic material. It was believed to be the final, objective arbiter, capable of pinning the linen's creation to a specific century with scientific certainty. The results were announced at a press conference and echoed around the globe. The cloth, the labs declared in unison, dated from between 1260 and 1390 AD. This placed its origin squarely in the medieval period, a time of renowned religious relic forgeries. For many, the case was closed. The shroud was a brilliant but undeniable fake. Yet, for the scientists and historians who had spent years studying its inexplicable properties, the verdict felt profoundly wrong. How could a medieval forger create a perfect photographic negative without any pigments? How could they possess such detailed knowledge of Roman crucifixion that would not be rediscovered for centuries? The carbon dating result created an irreconcilable conflict between a single test and a mountain of other evidence. Almost immediately, critics began picking apart the methodology. They pointed to the shroud's turbulent history, especially the fire of 1532. Could the intense heat and the water used to douse the flames have contaminated the linen with newer carbon, making it appear centuries younger? Others suggested that centuries of handling by countless hands, each leaving behind invisible oils and organic residue, could have fundamentally skewed the sample. A more compelling theory emerged regarding the sample location itself. The piece cut for testing was taken from a single, unrepresentative spot on the outer edge of the cloth. Textile experts later argued this area showed signs of being an expert medieval repair, a patch of newer threads woven seamlessly into the original fabric to reinforce a damaged section. If true, the labs would have been dating not the shroud itself, but a patch from the 1300s, a result that perfectly matched their findings but told a completely misleading story. This single scientific test, intended to bring closure, instead ignited one of the most heated debates in modern archaeology. It demonstrated a powerful truth that even the most advanced technology is only as reliable as the sample it analyzes and the context it ignores. The door to the mystery was not slammed shut, but blown wide open, inviting a new generation of researchers to look closer. So if the image is not a painting, what process could possibly create such a precise, ghostly portrait? Scientists have wrestled with this central question for decades, proposing theories that range from the mundane to the truly extraordinary. The most prominent natural explanation is known as the Maillard reaction. This is the same chemical process that browns a piece of toast or sears a steak, a reaction between sugars and amino acids. The theory suggests that amines, gases released from a decomposing body, slowly interacted with carbohydrate residues on the linen sheets over time. This gentle chemical process, proponents argue, could have produced the faint, straw-yellow discoloration we see on the fibers. Yet, while this might explain a general stain, it struggles to account for the shroud's defining features. The image possesses an astonishingly high resolution and contains what experts call three-dimensional information. It lacks the distortion you would expect from a cloth draped loosely over a body, where features like the nose would be blurred or smeared from direct contact. The Maillard reaction cannot easily explain how this perfect, undistorted image was projected onto the cloth with such photographic clarity. This failure of conventional chemistry has led to a more radical proposal, the radiation theory. Imagine a brief, intense flash of light and energy emanating from within the body itself. This sudden burst, some scientists speculate, could have acted like a primitive camera, projecting the image directly onto the linen. The energy would have been just powerful enough to cause a very superficial scorching of the topmost fibers, degrading the cellulose in a way that created the precise photo-negative shading. This theory elegantly explains why no pigments are present and why the image is so shallow, affecting only the surface of the threads. For those who view the shroud through a lens of faith, this burst of energy is intrinsically linked to a moment of resurrection, a physical event of unimaginable power leaving its mark on the physical world. Skeptics, of course, propose more earthly methods. Could a medieval artist have created the image by rubbing the cloth over a stone bas-relief, a carved statue? Or perhaps they used an early form of photography, employing light-sensitive chemicals centuries before their acknowledged invention. Researchers have tried to replicate these techniques, but every attempt falls short. A rubbing produces a distorted, contact-based image that lacks the shroud's three-dimensional quality. Early photographic methods leave behind clear chemical residues which are entirely absent from the linen. No one has ever successfully recreated an image that possesses all of the shroud's unique and confounding characteristics in a single experiment. This relentless failure to replicate the image in a lab is in itself a powerful piece of evidence. It leaves us staring at a seemingly impossible object, a relic that defies easy categorization, and forces us to look even closer at what the cloth is actually made of. The very threads of the shroud hold a story woven into their structure. It is crafted from a 3-to-1 herringbone twill linen, a complex and expensive weave that was known in the ancient world. This is not a simple homespun fabric. Its intricate pattern suggests it was a high-quality cloth, the kind that might have been used for a wealthy individual or a significant burial. But the most telling clues are hidden at a microscopic level. When scientists examined the fibers, they found something unexpected: tiny traces of cotton mixed in with the linen. This is a crucial detail. In 1st century Judea, linen and cotton were often processed on the same looms, leading to this kind of accidental contamination. This specific textile signature strongly points to an origin in the Middle East during the Roman era, not in medieval Europe where such mixing was less common. Further chemical analysis uncovered another compelling layer. Researchers identified microscopic traces of aloe and myrrh on the cloth. These are not random substances. They are precisely the aromatic resins described in the biblical accounts of the burial of Jesus, used in accordance with Jewish customs to anoint a body. Finding them embedded in the fibers adds a powerful dimension of historical consistency. Yet, the fabric itself remains a point of fierce debate. Some textile experts argue that the thread count and the herringbone technique are a perfect match for known 1st century textiles found at sites like Masada. Others counter that similar weaves existed in Europe during the 1300s. This leaves the physical cloth in a strange limbo, a tangible object that provides evidence for both sides of the argument. It is as if the linen itself refuses to give a simple answer, forcing investigators to look for clues not just in the weave, but in the very dust that clings to it. The dust clinging to the shroud's ancient fibers may hold secrets of its journey. In the 1970s, a Swiss criminologist and botanist named Max Frey was permitted to press sticky tape against the surface of the linen, collecting microscopic dust particles that had settled over centuries. Under his microscope, he identified dozens of different pollen grains. What he claimed to find was astonishing. Many of these pollen types, he asserted, came from plant species that grow only in a very specific area, the region around Jerusalem. One particular grain was from a thorny plant called Gundelia tournefortii, a species native to the Middle East. Frey's conclusion was bold. He argued that the shroud must have been present in the Holy Land at some point in its history, physically absorbing the botanical signature of that land. This was not just a minor detail, it was a potential roadmap placing the cloth in 1st century Judea long before its documented appearance in medieval France. For many, this pollen evidence was a powerful corroboration of the shroud's ancient origin story. Yet, science thrives on skepticism and verification. Other researchers soon raised serious doubts about Frey's work. The primary issue was contamination. Over hundreds of years, the shroud had been handled, unfolded, and displayed countless times. Could pollen from the hands of pilgrims, from the air of European chapels, or even from Frey's own laboratory have settled on the tape? Subsequent scientific teams attempted to replicate his findings, but their results were mixed and inconclusive, failing to confirm the specific, concentrated presence of Jerusalem area pollen that Frey had reported. The debate over the pollen highlights a fundamental challenge in studying such a unique object, separating its original story from the noise of history. Every touch, every movement, every breath near the cloth added a new layer of evidence or contamination, depending on your point of view. Despite the controversy, these tiny botanical traces force us to consider the shroud not as an isolated object, but as a traveler, a relic that may have gathered dust from many different environments on a long and mysterious journey across continents. This idea of a physical trail, a collection of microscopic clues, connects the shroud to other ancient relics, a comparison that reveals just how unique this investigation truly is. The forensic evidence written in blood on the shroud is perhaps its most chilling and direct testimony. When scientists analyzed the dark, reddish-brown stains, they identified them as human blood, specifically type AB. This finding, first established in the 1970s, has been confirmed by multiple, more advanced studies. The patterns these stains form are not random. They map a story of extreme trauma, corresponding precisely with the wounds of a Roman crucifixion as described in the Gospels. There are distinct flows from the scalp, consistent with the punctures of a crown of thorns. The back and legs are marked with dozens of small, dumbbell-shaped wounds, a perfect match for the Roman flagrum, a whip designed to tear the flesh. Most tellingly, a large, sharp wound in the side shows a clear flow of blood, and right beside it, a separate, clearer stain. This second stain is a serum clot ring, forensic evidence that the blood had separated, with the watery plasma leaking out after the heavier red cells had begun to clot. This indicates the blood flowed from a wound inflicted before death, and the body was moved shortly after, allowing the serum to seep out. It is a level of pathological detail no medieval artist could have known to include. Skeptics, however, point to a persistent anomaly. The blood on the shroud remains a vivid red, not the blackish brown of ancient blood. They argue this suggests it is not blood at all, but paint. Yet proponents counter with a compelling medical explanation. Later research detected the presence of high levels of bilirubin in the blood residues. Bilirubin is a substance produced by the body under conditions of extreme stress and physical trauma. It is a pigment that can preserve the red color of blood long after it would normally have darkened. This forensic tug-of-war leaves us with a deeply unsettling crime scene analysis. The blood evidence is simultaneously too accurate for a medieval forger and too perfect for some scientists to accept at face value. It forces us to confront the physical reality of the image, a man who was brutally tortured and killed, and to ask what miraculous or mundane process could have transferred his portrait so perfectly onto the cloth that wrapped him. The blood evidence presents a chillingly accurate forensic puzzle, but the image itself holds a secret far more complex. In the 1970s, a piece of equipment designed for space exploration was turned upon the ancient linen. It was called the VP-8 Image Analyzer, a machine developed by NASA to enhance topographic maps of the moon. When scientists fed the high-resolution photographs of the shroud into this device, they expected to see a flat, two-dimensional picture. What appeared on the screen left them speechless. The machine interpreted the subtle light and dark shading of the image not as random discolorations, but as precise data points for distance. The faintness of the image on the nose corresponded to the cloth being stretched further away from a face. The deeper shading in the eye sockets showed where the linen would have lain closer to the skin. The VP8 had in effect read the shroud like a three-dimensional scanner, generating a perfectly proportioned, lifelike bust of a human head and body. This was not an artist's interpretation. It was a topographical map encoded directly into the cloth. How is this possible? Think of trying to take a photograph of a friend's face and then using that single, flat picture to create a perfect, sculpted replica of their head, with every contour of the nose, every curve of the cheek, and every hollow of the eye perfectly rendered in 3 dimensions. No photograph in the world contains that kind of spatial information. A painting is even worse, as an artist's brushstrokes add their own texture and interpretation, distorting the true distances. The shroud's image, however, behaves differently. Its shading varies in perfect mathematical proportion to the cloth's distance from a body. This 3-dimensional encoding is a property that no known work of art from any period in history possesses. Researchers have tried for decades to replicate this effect using every conceivable medieval technique. They have draped cloths over statues, rubbed them with pigments, and experimented with chemical vapors. Every attempt fails. The resulting images are flat and distorted. They lack the precise, distance-based data set that the VP8 so easily extracted from the shroud. This single characteristic pushes the mystery into the realm of the seemingly impossible. It suggests the image was formed by a process that did not involve direct contact, but rather a projection of information, a momentary flash that captured the exact shape of a human form in astonishing detail. This inexplicable quality stands as one of the most formidable scientific arguments for the shroud's uniqueness, a puzzle that draws us ever deeper into the debate over what could have created it. This profound division is the very heart of the shroud's enduring power. On one side, proponents point to the mountain of inexplicable data. They ask how a medieval forger could create a perfect photographic negative containing 3-dimensional information, a feat that modern science cannot replicate. They highlight the anatomical precision, the forensic accuracy of the blood flows, and the traces of 1st-century Judean pollen. For them, the carbon dating is an outlier, a flawed test on a contaminated sample that cannot erase the overwhelming physical evidence. They see the shroud as a unique witness, an artifact that transcends normal explanation. On the other side, skeptics stand firmly on the carbon-14 results. They argue that science has already delivered its verdict, and it points squarely to the 1300s. They question why such a significant relic is absent from all early Christian writings and art for over 1,000 years. Could a clever artist, they propose, have used a basic camera obscura or some now lost chemical technique to create the image, exploiting knowledge that was rare but not impossible for the time? This debate is far more than an academic quarrel. It is a fundamental clash of how we interpret the world. Is the scientific method, with its reliance on repeatable tests like carbon dating, the ultimate arbiter of truth? Or can a single, anomalous object defy our current understanding and point toward a reality we have not yet grasped? The shroud becomes a litmus test, forcing each of us to weigh the value of a single, disputed scientific test against a constellation of other, equally puzzling evidence. Conferences are dedicated to it, papers are published for and against it, and the conversation never truly ends because the artifact itself refuses to fit neatly into any category. This ongoing struggle reveals just how deeply our personal beliefs, whether in pure materialism or in the possibility of the miraculous, shape our interpretation of the same set of facts. To truly understand the Shroud of Turin, you must first understand this great divide, for it is here, in the tension between faith and reason, that the mystery finds its most compelling voice. This deep division between faith and science is precisely what gives the shroud its enduring power. For millions of believers, it is not merely a historical artifact but a sacred object of profound veneration, a tangible connection to the divine. This intertwining of spiritual conviction with cold, hard empirical investigation creates a dynamic tension found in few other relics. Every scientific analysis is inevitably interpreted through a personal lens. A believer might see the inexplicable nature of the image as divine confirmation, a miraculous sign that defies human explanation. A skeptic, viewing the same data, will demand a purely naturalistic account, insisting that any gap in our current knowledge is not proof of a miracle, but merely a puzzle we have not yet solved. This fundamental difference in perspective has fueled both conflict and collaboration. Disputes have flared over testing methods, like the controversy surrounding the carbon dating sample, where accusations of contamination were met with firm defenses of scientific protocol. Yet, this same tension has also fostered remarkable partnerships. The very fact that the Vatican permitted a team of secular American scientists to spend 5 days conducting intensive, around-the-clock testing on one of Christianity's most precious relics is a testament to this unique relationship. It is a dialogue, sometimes a heated one, between two different ways of understanding the world. This ongoing interplay helps explain why the Shroud continues to captivate the global imagination. It embodies a timeless human quest, the struggle to reconcile belief with evidence, to find a meeting point between the heart's convictions and the mind's demand for proof. The cloth becomes a mirror, reflecting back our own deepest questions about what we accept as true and why. The near destruction of the Shroud in the 1997 fire was a stark turning point. It demonstrated with terrifying clarity that this enigmatic relic, which had survived for centuries, was perilously vulnerable. That moment of crisis forged a new commitment to its preservation, transforming how the cloth is protected for the future. Today, the Shroud rests in the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist in Turin, but it is no longer simply displayed on an altar. It is sealed within a custom-engineered, climate-controlled case, a marvel of modern conservation. This container is built from bulletproof glass and filled with inert argon gas, a stable atmosphere that prevents oxidation and halts the decay of the ancient linen fibers. The case itself is designed to protect against every conceivable threat, from temperature fluctuations and humidity to airborne pollutants and even physical attack. This is not merely storage, it is a form of scientific stasis, a deliberate pause in time to safeguard an object that has defied it for so long. The goal is absolute, to ensure that the faint, ghostly image remains intact for generations yet to come, a direct legacy of the fire that almost consumed it. This intense physical protection is paired with a revolutionary approach to study. How do you investigate an object you can no longer touch? The answer lies in light. Researchers now use multispectral imaging, capturing high-definition photographs in wavelengths beyond human vision, from ultraviolet to infrared. They employ non-invasive spectroscopy, where a beam of light scans the surface and analyzes the reflected signals to determine chemical composition, all without making physical contact. Every thread, every stain, every microscopic particle of pollen can be examined in staggering detail through a digital lens. This has led to an unexpected development, the creation of a perfect virtual replica. The Shroud has been digitally archived, a complete dataset that allows scientists from around the world to conduct research from their own laboratories, without ever requiring the relic to leave its protective case. This delicate balance between reverence and science defines the Shroud's modern era. The faithful can still journey to Turin for veneration, seeing the cloth with their own eyes, while scientists unlock its secrets with photons instead of scalpels. This ongoing, non-invasive scrutiny ensures that the investigation is far from over. Each new technological advance offers a fresh opportunity to re-examine the evidence, to ask the old questions with new tools, and perhaps to finally uncover a clue that previous generations could not see. Digital tools are now peeling back layers of time, revealing secrets locked within the shroud's fibers for centuries. High-resolution, three-dimensional modeling has transformed the relic into a virtual object, one that can be endlessly manipulated and explored. Researchers can zoom into its surface, examining details 1,000 times smaller than a human hair. This intense digital scrutiny has uncovered faint markings previously invisible to the naked eye, including what some believe could be traces of ancient Greek or Aramaic letters, perhaps the faded remnants of a funerary inscription. These are not claims made lightly. They are data points extracted through advanced algorithms that enhance contrast and map the subtlest variations in the cloth's coloration. The analysis of image intensity has been particularly revealing. By creating a precise map of how light and dark the image is across every square millimeter, computers have confirmed a critical fact. The shading correlates perfectly with the distance the linen would have been from a body in a lying position. It is a perfect gradient of information, a direct physical relationship that no artist could have conceived or painted by hand. This digital evidence powerfully reinforces what the VP8 analyzer first hinted at decades ago. With this precise three-dimensional model, scientists can now run sophisticated simulations, testing long-standing theories in a virtual laboratory. They can program a computer to simulate a burst of radiation emanating from a body, projecting its energy outward to see if it would create the shroud's specific, shallow, photo-negative imprint. They can model the slow, subtle chemistry of the Maillard reaction, watching how gases might interact with a cloth over time. They can even simulate the cloth being pressed against a bas-relief statue or rubbed with pigments. Time and again, the simulations fail. A radiation burst often produces an image that is too sharp or too deep, scorching the threads rather than lightly degrading the surface. Chemical reactions create blurry, distorted stains lacking the high-resolution clarity. Contact methods always produce the telltale distortions that the actual shroud miraculously lacks. No digital simulation has yet managed to replicate the unique and confounding combination of all the shroud's attributes in a single, coherent process. This failure is paradoxically a form of progress. It systematically eliminates possibilities, narrowing the field toward an answer that remains just out of reach. This high-tech detective work represents the new frontier of shroud research, a silent, digital interrogation that continues day and night, keeping the ancient mystery vibrantly alive in the modern world. Yet, to appreciate just how anomalous this object truly is, we must step away from the supercomputers and look back at the hands of history, to the world of medieval artistry from which it supposedly came. The world of medieval relics is filled with objects of profound devotion, but none have faced the microscope of modern science like the Shroud of Turin. Consider for a moment the veil of Veronica, a cloth said to bear the image of Christ's face, imprinted when a woman wiped his brow on the road to Calvary. Its power rests entirely on centuries of tradition and faith, for it presents no image that can be scientifically deconstructed or dated. Then there is the Sudarium of Oviedo, a small, stained cloth believed to have covered the head of Jesus after his death. Unlike the shroud, it shows no mysterious image, only clear, dark bloodstains. Yet, researchers have noted a startling correlation. The bloodstain patterns on the Sudarium, when mapped, appear to align perfectly with the blood flows on the shroud's head, as if both cloths were used on the same person in quick succession. This is a compelling, tangible link, but it remains a comparison of forensic details, not an investigation into an inexplicable portrait. The shroud exists in a category all its own. It is the only relic that combines the deep tradition of veneration with an immense body of physical evidence that actively resists explanation. Where other sacred objects ask for belief, the shroud demands investigation. This unique duality has placed it at the center of a cultural conversation that spans centuries. It is not just an article of faith for the devout, but a permanent question mark for the scientific mind, an artifact that refuses to be dismissed as mere legend. This ongoing dialogue between the chapel and the laboratory is what gives the shroud its unparalleled resonance, transforming it from a simple piece of linen into a timeless mirror of our own search for truth. That faint image on ancient linen has escaped the confines of the laboratory and the cathedral, becoming a fixture of our modern imagination. It appears as a central plot device in best-selling novels, where it might hold the key to a world-altering secret or the proof of a divine event. It is the star of countless television documentaries, each framing the same evidence through a different lens, either of skeptical inquiry or spiritual wonder. In film, its haunting visage symbolizes the ultimate mystery, the point where human history collides with the possibility of the supernatural. This relentless cultural presence reinforces its role as the ultimate symbol of the battle between belief and empirical proof. A tangible example of its magnetic pull occurred in 2015 when the shroud was publicly exhibited in Turin. The event was not a quiet ceremony for a select few. It was a global pilgrimage. Over 2 million people from every corner of the world waited in lines for hours, filing past the climate-controlled case for a fleeting, few-second glimpse of the cloth. They were not just devout Catholics, they were historians, scientists, tourists, and the simply curious, all drawn by the same fundamental question: what is this thing? This massive public engagement demonstrates that the shroud's appeal is universal, transcending any single belief system to tap into a shared human fascination with the unknown. The media plays a crucial, if sometimes problematic, role in this process. Headlines frequently scream about a new study that finally solves the mystery, only for the claims to be quietly walked back by the scientific community after further review. This cycle of sensationalism can oversimplify the deeply nuanced and complex research, reducing a multi-year investigation to a soundbite. Yet, this very attention has a positive side. It generates public interest, which in turn can open doors to crucial funding and access for researchers. The global spotlight keeps the scientific debate vigorous and public, ensuring that new generations of investigators are drawn to the puzzle. This sprawling cultural footprint, from the silver screen to the newsstand, proves the shroud is more than an artifact. It is a global icon, a blank canvas upon which we project our deepest questions about science, faith, and our own place in the universe. This widespread fascination does not just reflect the mystery, it actively fuels the quest for answers, shaping the very direction of future studies by demanding they speak not only to experts, but to all of us. These criticisms strike at the very heart of the scientific process itself. The carbon dating controversy is perhaps the most potent example. Imagine a jury being presented with a single, seemingly definitive piece of evidence that is later revealed to have been mishandled. That is precisely what critics argue happened in 1988. The sample was taken from a single, unrepresentative location on the outer edge of the cloth, an area that some textile experts insist shows clear signs of being an invisible medieval repair. Using a technique known as reweaving, a skilled restorer could have seamlessly integrated new cotton threads into the ancient linen to reinforce a damaged section. If this theory is correct, then the 3 laboratories were not dating the original shroud at all, but a patch from the 1300s, a result that perfectly matches their findings while telling a completely misleading story. This is not a minor procedural quibble, it is a fundamental challenge to the test's validity, suggesting the entire premise of the sampling was flawed from the start. This issue of interpretation extends far beyond the linen itself. Take the analysis of the bloodstains. One researcher might look at the distinct serum halos around the wounds and see undeniable forensic proof of a real crucifixion. Another might view the same reddish color and argue it must be paint, since old blood typically darkens. Both are looking at the exact same physical evidence, yet their underlying assumptions guide them to opposite conclusions. This is the human element of science, where even the most objective data can be filtered through a personal lens. The same subjectivity applies to the pollen analysis. One scientist's groundbreaking discovery of Jerusalem-specific pollen is another scientist's potential case of modern contamination from centuries of handling. Without the ability to conduct repeated, blind studies where the analysts do not know which sample is which, these interpretations remain open to debate, vulnerable to the unconscious influence of what the researcher hopes or expects to find. Compounding these problems is the profound challenge of access. The shroud is not a common artifact in a museum lab that can be routinely examined. It is a deeply venerated relic, and its caretakers, the Catholic Church, have a sacred duty to preserve it. This creates a necessary tension. Every physical test, no matter how carefully conducted, is inherently destructive. Cutting threads for carbon dating, applying sticky tape for pollen, even intense light exposure for spectroscopy, all carry a tiny but permanent cost to the cloth's integrity. The Church's restrictions are not an attempt to hide the truth, but to protect a fragile, irreplaceable object for future generations. Yet, this protective stance inevitably limits the scope and frequency of scientific inquiry, making it difficult to gather the volume of reproducible data that would normally settle such a fierce debate. Ultimately, these criticisms serve as a crucial reminder that science is not an infallible machine dispensing absolute truth. It is a human endeavor, a slow and often messy conversation filled with false starts, debated interpretations, and procedural missteps. The journey of the shroud through the world of science highlights all of these limitations in stark relief. It shows us that a single test, no matter how prestigious, can be undermined by a questionable sample. It reveals how even the most brilliant minds can look at the same data and see different stories, and it demonstrates how the practical realities of preserving a unique object can constrain our ability to investigate it fully. This recognition does not weaken the scientific pursuit, it strengthens it by underscoring the relentless need for transparency, for skepticism, and for new methods that can peer into the mystery without causing it harm. This very need is now driving a new generation of researchers to propose non-invasive tests that could finally provide the clarity everyone seeks. The future of this investigation now lies in the silent language of atoms and molecules. Researchers are proposing a new wave of non-destructive tests, methods that can peer deep into the linen's chemistry without ever touching a single thread. Imagine using a beam of X-rays to gently probe the cloth, a technique called X-ray fluorescence. This would not damage the shroud, but it would reveal the precise elemental signature of the image and the bloodstains. What if the mysterious image contains trace amounts of a substance completely unknown in medieval pigments, or shows a chemical profile that only matches first-century materials from Judea? Such a finding could fundamentally reshape the debate. Alongside this, there are powerful calls for a new round of carbon dating, but this time with a critical difference. Scientists now propose taking multiple, tiny samples from various parts of the cloth. carefully avoiding any edges that might have been repaired. They would use vastly refined techniques designed to strip away centuries of contamination, from human hand oils to smoke residue from the fire. The goal is to isolate the pure cellulose of the original flax fibers. If samples from the center of the cloth, away from the controversial edge, were to yield a date in the 1st century, it would shatter the medieval consensus. Conversely, if they all pointed to the 1300s, it would force a radical rethinking of every other piece of evidence. This single test, done with modern precision, holds the power to resolve the dating controversy forever. Perhaps the most intimate proposal involves the microscopic debris trapped in the weave. Advanced mass spectrometry could analyze the molecular dust, but some scientists look even further, to the possibility of extracting ancient DNA. What stories could those fragmented genetic blueprints tell? They might reveal the ethnic origin of the person wrapped in the cloth, or even identify the countless individuals who handled it over centuries through skin cells and perspiration left behind. But this path is fraught with difficulty. DNA degrades over time, and the results could be a chaotic mixture of genetic material from hundreds of sources, impossible to untangle. There are also profound ethical questions about extracting genetic information from an object of such deep religious significance. Who has the right to that data? These proposed investigations represent the next chapter in a saga that spans faith and reason. Each technological advance offers a new key for a lock that has remained stubbornly closed. Yet, every potential answer they might provide carries immense weight, reaching far beyond the laboratory and into the very heart of belief. The scientific quest for the Shroud's origin is inevitably a journey toward a theological horizon. What would it mean for the world if science, after centuries of doubt, finally affirmed the cloth's ancient authenticity? This single piece of linen touches the deepest questions of Christian belief. For theologians, the Shroud is not merely a historical puzzle, but a profound meditation on the resurrection itself. If authentic, it would represent the first and only physical evidence of that pivotal event, a snapshot of the moment of transfiguration. Some see in its mysterious, non-painted image a perfect complement to Scripture, a tangible echo of the divine light said to have shone from the tomb. The idea of a burst of radiant energy encoding a three-dimensional portrait onto the cloth aligns, for them, with descriptions of a powerful, transformative resurrection, not a quiet resuscitation. It speaks to the incarnation, the belief that God became truly, physically human, and that this humanity, in its moment of greatest glory, left a physical mark on the world. Yet this very potential raises a critical tension within Christian thought. Should faith require a material witness, many believers embrace the Shroud as a powerful sign, a gift that strengthens devotion and offers a visceral connection to the reality of Christ's passion. They see it as a bridge between the spiritual and the physical, affirming that the divine can interact with the material world in detectable ways. Others, however, voice a strong caution. They worry that an over-reliance on such an artifact can edge toward idolatry, shifting focus from the spiritual message of the Gospels to the veneration of a physical object. For this group, faith is meant to be a matter of the spirit, not contingent on scientific proof. A faith that needs a shroud, they argue, is a faith built on sand. The Catholic Church itself has navigated this delicate balance for centuries. It has never officially proclaimed the shroud to be the authentic burial cloth of Christ. Instead, it carefully promotes the relic as a powerful icon, a holy image intended to inspire prayerful reflection on the paschal mystery, the suffering, death, and resurrection of Jesus. Popes have called it a mirror of the gospel, an object that directs the faithful toward the central tenets of their belief, regardless of its ultimate scientific origin. This deliberate, cautious stance allows the Church to honor the deep devotion it inspires without staking its theological authority on a scientific debate that remains unresolved. Understanding these deep theological currents is essential. It reveals why the Shroud is so much more than a cold case for forensic science. It is a spiritual Rorschach test, reflecting what we believe about the relationship between the divine and the material world. And it is precisely this profound stakes that makes the alternative, the possibility of an elaborate deception, such a compelling and persistent counter-narrative. The shadow of a brilliant forger has long been cast over the Shroud. Among the most persistent theories is that a medieval artist, armed with unexpected genius, created the image using a primitive form of photography. Imagine mixing silver compounds or light-sensitive chemicals onto a linen sheet, then using a camera obscura, a simple box with a lens, to project the image of a model or a bas-relief carving onto the cloth. This would explain the photo-negative quality that so stunned Secondo Pia. Yet, this elegant idea collapses under the weight of practical details. Such a process would inevitably leave behind chemical residues, distinct traces of metallic silver or other reactive agents embedded deep within the fibers. Decades of the most sensitive spectroscopic analysis have searched for these very traces and found nothing. The image is not an applied substance, but a superficial degradation of the linen itself, a fact that no early photographic method can account for. Furthermore, the image possesses a perfect, consistent focus from head to toe, a feat impossible to achieve with a simple lens on a draped, uneven surface. The bas-relief theory faces a similar obstacle. Rubbing a cloth over a carved statue, no matter how skillfully done, produces a distorted image. Areas of direct contact, like the nose, would be sharply defined, while recessed areas like the eyes would be blurred or missed entirely. The Shroud shows no such distortion. Its three-dimensional information is flawless, something a simple rubbing could never achieve. This has not stopped speculation from leaping forward in time, pointing a finger at a later artistic legend. Some have proposed that Leonardo da Vinci, a known experimenter, created the Shroud as an elaborate hoax. The problem is an unbridgeable gap in time. The Shroud was already a well-documented, venerated object in the 1400s, decades before Leonardo was even born. Historical records place it firmly in the possession of the House of Savoy, its existence widely known, making such a later fabrication an impossibility. When human ingenuity fails to provide an answer, nature is often the next suspect. Could fungal growth or a simple chemical reaction between the cloth and a body have produced the stain? While organic processes can certainly discolor linen, they operate without purpose or precision. They cannot encode the specific, high-resolution details of a human form, from the delicate bones of the hands to the subtle musculature of the torso. A fungal bloom does not know Roman anatomy or create a perfect serum halo around a wound. These natural explanations produce blurry, random stains, not a meticulously detailed forensic document. Examining these alternative ideas reveals a fascinating symmetry. Both believers and skeptics are forced to propose extraordinary mechanisms. One side suggests a miraculous burst of energy, the other a lost, advanced technology from the Middle Ages. Each theory is a testament to the human mind's relentless drive to solve this puzzle, to fit the impossible object into a box we can understand. Yet, when held against the cold, hard light of the evidence, every proposed method of forgery so far has crumbled, leaving the central mystery untouched and as compelling as ever. The quiet, sustained investigation of the Shroud was suddenly and dramatically interrupted in 2002. In a move that shocked the international research community, a team of textile experts performed a secret restoration on the relic, an action taken without the consultation of the broader scientific bodies that had studied it for decades. Their goal was preservation, to remove what they saw as potential threats to the linen's longevity. They carefully unpicked the patches that had been sewn on after the 1532 fire, and they detached the centuries-old backing cloth known as the Holland cloth. They then pressed the shroud flat, intending to eliminate creases and wrinkles they feared could stress the fragile fibers. To the restorers, this was a necessary act of conservation. To many scientists, it was an irreversible catastrophe. They argued that this pressing and cleaning may have inadvertently destroyed a universe of potential evidence. Microscopic pollen grains trapped in the folds could have been dislodged or contaminated. Faint chemical traces, crucial for future analysis, might have been brushed away. The very physical structure of the cloth, with its unique draping qualities, was permanently altered. The process did, however, reveal some hidden details with stark clarity. Without the backing cloth, the full, symmetrical pattern of the water stains from the fire became visible, a ghostly map of the relic's narrow escape. Yet this small gain was overshadowed by a larger loss of trust. The restoration sparked a firestorm of debate within the research community, raising profound questions about who has the right to intervene with such a unique object. It highlighted a fundamental conflict between the desire to preserve an artifact for veneration and the scientific imperative to preserve every scrap of data for future study. The ethical lessons from this event are now studied by conservators worldwide, a case study in the delicate balance between protecting a relic and locking away its secrets forever. This very tension between reverence and inquiry extends beyond the scientific community and into the realm of global faith, where the shroud speaks a powerful, if silent, language to believers of many traditions. The shroud's mystery resonates far beyond the walls of the Christian church, reaching into the hearts and minds of people from diverse spiritual traditions. For Muslims, Jesus, known as Isa, is a deeply revered prophet, a figure of immense importance mentioned throughout the Quran. While Islamic teaching does not accept the crucifixion in the same theological way, the image of a man bearing the wounds of profound suffering still holds a powerful human significance. It becomes a point of connection, a shared historical figure whose story inspires reflection on submission to God and the meaning of sacrifice. This common ground has allowed the shroud to appear on the agenda of interfaith dialogues, where scholars and religious leaders gather not to debate its authenticity, but to explore its symbolism. In these spaces, the cloth is less a doctrinal proof and more a universal catalyst for conversation. It prompts questions that transcend any single faith. How do different traditions understand suffering? What is the relationship between the physical body and the spirit? How do we, as humans, grapple with the unknown? A Buddhist might contemplate the image as a profound illustration of impermanence and compassion, while a Jewish scholar might reflect on its connections to first-century burial practices in Judea. These discussions shift the focus from a question of fact, is it real, to a question of meaning, what does it represent to humanity? This broader engagement transforms the shroud from a Christian relic into a human artifact, a silent witness that invites everyone, regardless of creed, to project their own spiritual questions onto its faint, enigmatic line. It demonstrates that the drive to find meaning in mystery is a universal human trait, one that can build bridges of mutual respect and shared curiosity. This collective wonder, sparked by a single piece of linen, ultimately leads us to the most intimate level of all, the personal, individual encounter with the image itself. Perhaps the most powerful testimony the shroud offers lies not in a laboratory report, but in the quiet, personal reactions of those who see it. People from all walks of life, standing before the linen in Turin or simply gazing at its photograph, often describe an unexpected wave of emotion. It is a feeling of awe, a deep and contemplative silence that seems to emanate from the faint, haunting image. This is not merely an intellectual curiosity about an ancient puzzle. It is a visceral, human response to a face that carries the marks of profound suffering and a strange, enduring peace. Online forums and social media groups are filled with thousands of these personal testimonials, where individuals share how this encounter has reshaped their perspective. A lifelong skeptic might write about a new, nagging curiosity that challenges their purely materialistic worldview. A person of faith might describe how the image deepened their spiritual connection, making the story of the Passion feel startlingly immediate and real. These shared experiences create a unique, global community, bound not by a single answer but by a common fascination. This collective wonder invites you to look inward. Setting aside the fierce debates for a moment, what is your own reaction to this ghostly portrait? Does it spark a sense of historical connection, a link to a distant, pivotal moment in time? Does it evoke a spiritual question, a contemplation of the divine? Or does it simply ignite a burning desire to know how such a thing could possibly exist? There are no wrong answers here because your personal interpretation becomes part of the Shroud's ongoing story. It transforms this ancient linen from a passive object under a microscope into an active catalyst for your own inquiry. This participatory dimension is what truly keeps the mystery alive, reminding us that the most significant investigations often begin not in a lab, but within our own sense of wonder. The evidence for the Shroud presents us with a perfect scientific stalemate. On one hand, we have an image that defies replication, a photo-negative portrait with encoded three-dimensional data formed by a superficial scorching of the linen's topmost fibers. No artist's brush, no known chemical process, and no act of nature has ever been able to reproduce this unique combination of characteristics in a laboratory. This points toward an event or technology beyond our current understanding. On the other hand, the radiocarbon dating from 3 independent labs firmly places the linen's origin in the medieval period, a time when the creation of religious relics was a documented industry. This single piece of evidence provides a clear, simple answer that many find compelling. Yet, the case is far from closed. The bloodstains tell a story of real trauma, with patterns and serum rings that match a Roman crucifixion with chilling forensic accuracy. The fabric itself, a herringbone twill linen with traces of cotton, whispers of an origin in the ancient Middle East, not medieval Europe, and the controversial pollen grains suggest a journey that began in the environs of Jerusalem. Each piece of evidence is a strong pillar supporting a theory, but each pillar is immediately countered by another. The carbon dating is challenged by claims of contamination from fire and repair. The forensic blood evidence is questioned because of its unusual color. The pollen analysis is doubted due to potential contamination over centuries. This is not a case where one side has all the proof. Instead, we are left with two competing narratives, each supported by a different set of facts, each unable to fully dismantle the other. This balanced tension is precisely what makes the Shroud of Turin an enduring global fascination. It refuses to be categorized, forcing us to live with the discomfort of not knowing, and inviting every new generation to examine the data and decide for themselves where the truth lies. The Shroud of Turin ultimately stands as a profound testament to our unending quest for meaning. It is a mystery that refuses to be solved, a puzzle where the pieces of science, history, and faith interlock without ever forming a complete picture. We have witnessed how the most advanced scientific analyses can provide powerful clues yet fail to deliver a final verdict, leaving the door open for both devout belief and rigorous skepticism. This is not a failure of investigation, but rather a reflection of the relic's unique nature. It challenges the very boundaries of what we think we know, pushing us to consider possibilities that lie just beyond the edge of our current understanding. The true legacy of the Shroud may not be a definitive answer, but the conversation it inspires. It reminds us that some questions are so profound that the search itself holds more value than any single conclusion. There is a unique beauty in the unknown, a space where curiosity flourishes and our minds are open to new ways of seeing the world. This enduring enigma encourages us to approach all great mysteries with a blend of open-minded wonder and relentless, rigorous inquiry. Thank you for exploring this deep dive into the world's most controversial relic. We invite you to continue the conversation by sharing your own thoughts and perspectives in the comments below, and to join us as we uncover more historical mysteries that captivate the human imagination.